Netflix now has ads. I don't know if you all heard the news, but Netflix has officially announced that they will be adding ads to their platform, to the collective groan of most people who have Netflix. Now, when you're on your mom's Netflix account, you have to watch ads, and it's going to be terrible. I don't know if Netflix has officially announced if there's going to be the pay more money for an ad-free version, but this brings up some crazy things to me. And to start, I know I may not look it, but I am older than people, than a lot of you. I remember Netflix being born. I remember getting the Netflix envelope in the mail and putting the disc into my Wii to watch movies with my family. So if you don't know anything about the old history of Netflix, Netflix has always been what we would call in marketing and business disruptive. So back in the old days of watching movies and watching TV shows, if you wanted to rent a movie, you would go to either a Blockbuster or to a movie rental store in your small town, and you would go there, you'd pay a little bit of money, probably 20% of what the movie would cost to own. You would then take it home, and as long as you brought it back on time, you didn't incur any additional fees. Netflix started the idea of what if you paid a monthly fee, and I remember everyone who got Netflix had the same mentality of, well, if you watch X amount of movies per month, the monthly fee becomes worth it. We've seen this with other things like movie passes and stuff like that usually end up failing.
What if we gave people movies to watch in their homes? Like if we had retail locations, like instead of...
That's Blockbuster.
Blockbuster?
How's Blockbuster doing? What's their market share?
But that was Netflix's original value proposition, is it was a monthly fee, and how it worked is instead of having to go to a physical store, you would literally put in your movies on the Netflix app, they would send 2 or 3 to you, and you couldn't get your next movie until you sent 1 movie back. So you always had 2 or 3 movies on hand, and you always had to send it back. And I believe when it started, it was like 5 or 6 movies per month was what would make you break even, compared to going to the rental store down the street. And Netflix famously killed Blockbuster by doing this. And nowadays, Blockbuster gets referenced in a random movie to set the period piece and tell us what time period we're in, because it is a relic of a forgotten time. But Netflix eventually disrupted the industry in a new way, which was becoming the very first or one of the first streaming services. And let's just think about that for a second, of the value proposition of a streaming service. So let's talk about the obvious alternative to streaming, which there are 2. Going to the movies and owning a cable box. Now, going to the movies is a lot of money in both directions. Obviously, we can all joke about the obscene ticket price of going to the movies. From the other side of that, the movie theater has a lot of different moving parts. They have to pay their employees, they get paid for the food costs, but also they are paying the distributors to get the movies that they have. So that's the movie theater side of things, but let's talk about the cable side of things. So you have to buy a cable box from Spectrum, Comcast, someone. They will send over a professional to install it for you that costs an extra $100, even though you can do it yourself. And basically, it's an obscenely pricey package. It might come bundled with phone and Wi-Fi, but it's extremely expensive. It is constantly getting more expensive. They'll often put hidden fees, they'll up the price. And on top of that, you're getting ads. And on top of that, your options for what you watch are usually 100 to 500 channels, with 100 of those channels just being HD versions of channels you already have, and another 100 being the music channels that have been replaced by Lo-Fi Girl. But yeah, that was the cable proposition, and it is a lot of money from the consumer for not a lot of great service. So Netflix was immediately disruptive. And when we talk about disruptive in any industry, what we're saying there is everything kind of hit a stagnation and then someone messed with it. Usually the way you disrupt an industry isn't really profitable. If you're going to disrupt an industry, you have a 10, 20-year plan where you're gonna offer something at a loss until it becomes profitable. So let's talk about Netflix. Their original plan, cheap, so not a lot of money from your consumers. You also had no ads on the product, and you had almost unlimited content in a sense. Instead of having to flip through channels and find something to watch, you could watch an entire show in a matter of days. So already more convenient, less expensive, better product. And I promise you, they have not made money on it once. Definitely not. Because what you also have to think about from the Netflix side of things is how they get their content. They only have 2 options and both cost a lot of money. They have to have relationships with other companies and ask for their content, ask for their movies, ask for their TV shows, and those are ongoing contracts that are constantly being renegotiated. A big thing that I think a lot of people have talked about is how Netflix doesn't release their numbers, and a big part of this is if certain companies knew how many people watched Lost on Netflix or watched Friends on Netflix, they could probably renegotiate their contract and say, hey, you should pay us more money to license Lost or to license Friends. And that's part of why I think Netflix doesn't really want to share numbers with people, because they don't want bad negotiations. Now, their other option is to create their own content. Think Stranger Things, Jessica Jones, Defenders, all the other content they've made. There's pre-production, post-production, the actors, the set design, very expensive, especially for a company that started off as a DVD rental service. So those are your options for how you're going to make your content. Once again, Netflix is operating at a terrible loss. So that's your Netflix versus your cable. So let's talk about what went wrong for Netflix. So I promise you, the Netflix board of directors, their investors, their shareholders have been hearing the same story for the last 10 years. We're not making any profit, but we're going to. And this is a thing that happens with a lot of startups and small businesses, especially when we talk about disruptive businesses. We're not making a profit, but we're going to is usually what these unicorn companies kind of go for. And the idea is in the future we will make a profit because we will kill someone else in the industry. The idea of Netflix was to basically draw people away from cable to their platform, and once there was enough people on that platform, they would be able to make money in a variety of ways. First, they would make money off of all the consumers paying for Netflix. But the bigger thing is, if all of a sudden the only way to get people to watch your TV show or your movie is to get yourself on Netflix because all of the millennials and all of the Gen Z people have moved over to Netflix, now the negotiation cards are in Netflix's hands. In order to put Friends on their streaming service, like NBC is not going to ask for a lot of money because they just want eyes, they want viewership, they want people to continue watching this stuff. So as things become less competitive on that side, you get better deals from these other companies. And honestly, I think Netflix was in a right way for a while, but they kind of did an Icarus because Netflix became the common culture. I mean, Netflix and chill became a joke. There were, online sketches by CollegeHumor about spying on your boyfriend's Netflix account. Like, Netflix became the thing for our generation. Everyone had Netflix, everyone was canceling cable, and Netflix really looked like in 10, 20 years they'd win. Enough of the next generation wouldn't have cable, and enough of them would have Netflix, and that would be it. Netflix would have exactly what they want. They would be able to negotiate really good contracts with Fox and Disney, and they'd have this, user base that's trapped because you're not going to go back to cable, and cable's going to slowly implode and die. And eventually they'd be able to raise the prices on us, and they'd be able to lower the prices on making new media, and they'd become a profitable company. And the issue is they became too big too fast. I think with the blowing up of things like Stranger Things and some of the Netflix projects, everything that happened with streaming made it so clear that streaming was the future. But I promise you right now, none of these streaming companies are making money. And honestly, I think the winner is going to be Disney Plus, and I have a few reasons for that. But Disney Plus is probably going to win the streaming wars, and they're going to win purely because they can afford to not make money for a very long period of time. Disney Plus is definitely not making money right now. They are doing things similar to Netflix. They're making their own shows like Moon Knight. But here's what makes Disney different. Instead of having to negotiate contracts with everyone else to, get Friends on Disney Plus, they own the companies. They own Pixar, they own Fox, they own Hulu now. They own their competitors, they own the distributors, they own the networks, and the idea there is they don't have to negotiate these contracts. They just get to put their own stuff on their own platform, and that platform is going to keep growing and growing and growing. Now on top of that, when Disney Plus came out, their original price point had two tiers. One tier was Netflix's original cost, which would get you just Disney Plus. The other was Netflix's current cost, which was going to get you Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN, all of the things that they own basically. And that's intentional. That was very intentional. And Disney can pretend it wasn't, but it was. And the idea there is we are offering a better product for less money. And this is the plan, but it's going to look really bad in 10 to 20 years. Let's talk about vertical integration. So way back when, if you were going to see a movie in the early 1900s, there were 5 movie studios. You had RKO, MGM, Paramount, Fox, 20th Century Fox, the other one that I keep forgetting for some reason. It's been a while since I took classes at a film school. But anyway, you had your 5 big companies. They were vertically integrated companies. Now, what does that mean? That means they produced the movies on their own Hollywood studios. They then distributed the movies to movie theaters, and the movie theaters were owned by them. So if you went to see a Paramount movie in the early 1900s, it was made on a Paramount lot in Hollywood. It was then distributed by a Paramount company to a Paramount movie theater in your city. So they owned every step of the process, and they made money on every single step. Now, this is Disney's dream, because Disney makes their animated movies, or owns the companies that do, in the case of Pixar. They then distribute them, and now they are going to stream them. Disney's tried a few different ways to make their streaming service make more money currently. One way that they're doing that is whenever they release a movie in theaters, they're also releasing it on their streaming service at an upped rate. And I know a lot of people hate that and are like, I don't want to, I'm gonna wait until Encanto becomes free on Disney Plus. But you have to realize who the target demo is for that little bundle idea, because the target demo Disney's going after are families. If you're a mom, dad, 2, 3 kids, and you go to a movie theater, that's coming out to $60 to $80, depending on where you live. You're going to a movie theater, you have to buy 4 or 5 movie tickets, popcorn, drinks, candy. When it's all said and done, you could be almost at $100 in the hole for watching a family movie. Whereas Disney's offering it for $19.99 or $12.99 or whatever it was to watch it at home, at your couch, and then you go to Target, buy some popcorn, some movie theater candy, and you're good. And plus, you also have the enjoyment of watching it in your own home. So with that in mind, Disney has kind of a win in all 3 directions here. Either they're getting money because you went to the movie theater to watch Encanto, or they're making money because you paid extra money to watch Encanto day 1 on Disney Plus, or they're getting extra money because you just own Disney Plus. Now, obviously that third option is the way that they make the least money, but it still makes the money. And once again, Disney already has been creating content for years. They have a huge backlog of content that they own, from Disney Animations to Disney Studios to Pixar to Fox to everything, honestly. They also own one of their biggest competitors in streaming, which is Hulu, and have actually integrated Hulu into their own thing, which has also created a bigger problem for Netflix, because there's a huge conflict of interest in owning Hulu, because Disney can make sure that Hulu gets better negotiation deals on their content, because Disney has these relationships and has this giant spiderweb of content. Meanwhile, Netflix is now at a point where, I promise you, it costs Netflix more money to negotiate for new content. It costs them more money to make new content. They're losing content on their platform that is owned by Disney because Disney's taking it from them. So their product is consistently getting worse. It's becoming more expensive. Whenever it gets more expensive, more people leave and go to Disney Plus, which means less consumers, which means you have to raise the prices more and you have to add ads, and Netflix's product is going to continually get worse and more expensive and lose more people. And Netflix, ironically, is going to implode the same way they wanted cable to. They're going to watch as their consumers leave them, and their licensing deals get worse, and their competitors' licensing deals get better, because Disney owns the other companies. And eventually, someone is either going to have to buy out Netflix, or Netflix is just going to implode on itself. But however you feel about Netflix, however you feel about Disney, Hulu, Peacock, that poor Peacock, however you feel about these companies, what you do need to realize is, what is this going to look like in 10 to 20 years? Because this is how cable happens. This is how this system happens. If Disney ever gets to a point where the only streaming services are themselves and Hulu, or, a couple other people, but they all have to play nice with Disney because Disney's the Goliath, then Disney gets to charge whatever they want. They can put ads wherever they want. They can make it that you need the special Disney Plus box that plugs into your TV that costs $400, and you have to pay a rental on it, and you have to rent the remote, and you have to hire someone to install the Disney Plus box because you're not allowed to do it. Disney will be able to do all those things in the very near future. And when you say, well, Disney's not going to do that, they care about their consumer. Do they? Do they? Because, once again, there's a board of directors somewhere right now at Disney that knows that Disney Plus isn't making money. It is operating at a loss right now. But it's not going to be operating at a loss forever. And if they win, they are going to make their product so more expensive than cable, because they'll be allowed to, because there won't be competition. So unless Congress or someone starts passing laws against a streaming monopoly that's being built, that streaming monopoly is coming, and it's not going to look good. I'm in the weird camp where I know Disney is probably the evil Goliath here, much like Google with YouTube and Amazon with Twitch. But I'm in the weird camp where, like, but I also want to watch Encanto, so I own Disney Plus, and I want to watch Moon Knight, so I own Disney Plus. So I'm supporting the problem. In 10, 20 years, when this costs hundreds of dollars a month, I'm gonna feel so stupid, but also I can't not watch Marvel. So they already have me as a consumer. But anyway, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, do those things. Thank you so much. Have a good one.